I was asked to speak today about my life as a psychic. And I didn't know until I started to take classes in mediumship development that there is a distinction between a psychic and a medium. A psychic is someone who is a sensitive and can pick up energies and information that often evade the general public. And a medium is someone who communicates with people on the spirit side. Often, I'd say most mediums are psychics, and a lot of psychics are mediums. It's often the same thing, but there is a distinction. And one question I often get is, when did you know that you were mediumistic? Or how did you discover your gifts? And I hadn't really thought much about it, but as I was asked that question repeatedly, I began to go back, and I realized that even as a child, I was already having experiences with the spirit world. When I was a very small child, 4 and under, our backyard abutted a cemetery. And sometimes we would have wanderers wandering in from the cemetery, weren't quite sure what had happened and where they were. And usually they were rather unevolved spirits, we should say, that didn't realize that there was a life after death and were just very confused. And as a little child, I found it pretty frightening. And there was one, I remember, who stood in the corner of my parents' room. I slept in a little crib room right off of their room. And I saw this guy standing in the corner, and he was quite dark, and he would only show up at night. And I knew his name. I called him Mr. Plosion. And now as an adult, I think, oh, maybe he died in an explosion. So Mr. Plosion would show up, and I would be very frightened and wake my mother and ask her to get him out of there. And she would look right at him, and she'd say, "There's no one there, dear." So I thought, that's how you get rid of them. You look them right in the eye and say, "You're not there." So she wasn't afraid of them. I was. And I thought, okay, you just deny their existence and they'll leave you alone. And there was another one that was really formless, just kind of a big blob. And my sister and I both saw him. And we thought it was a dream. But as adults, we shared this nightmare we had as children. And we realized, oh, he must have been one of the wanderers from the cemetery next door. And I was trained to ignore the spirits that I saw. I did have a playmate, which people called an imaginary playmate. And he always wore the same thing. He always had a striped t-shirt on, which was typical of the 50s. His name was Tommy, and he was my age. And we would play together in the yard, in the garage. I don't remember him being around much after I was about 5 or 6, because just before my 5th birthday, we moved to another house, and there was no nearby cemetery. And I remember playing with him in the garage, but when an adult would approach, I would tell him, "Shh, quiet. They're not supposed to know about you." So I was acculturated to realize that you don't share about the spirits you're seeing. That when I talked about Tommy, I was told that he wasn't real. In other words, maybe talking about Tommy would be taken as lying, which was a very serious offense. The spirit world was very real to me as a small child. My mother taught me to pray when I was just a tot. And I can remember her putting me to bed at night and praying a simple little prayer, "Little Jesus, meek and mild, look on me, a little child." And then we've had the guardian angel prayer, "Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. Amen." And I had a Catholic education. And the Catholics, one good thing, lots of people bash them, but they do know the reality of the spirit world. And they have a saint for every occasion. There's a patron saint for anything. And when I was 10 years old, I asked for my 10th birthday, believe it or not, I wanted a book, The Lives of the Saints. It was like a directory of all the saints. And you could look them up by name, or you could look them up by date, and you could know who's the saint of the day and how do they get to be saints. And I thought, wow, that would be really cool. I'd like to be a saint someday. And the Catholic definition of a saint was someone who had proven through their miracles attributed to them after their death that they'd made it safely to heaven. And the Catholic Church had a process to, the first step was to beatify, I believe they call it. They would call them holy. And then the final step was canonization. They would be canonized, and then they were officially part of the Catholic collection of saints. When I was a teenager, canonizing is the Catholic Church has lawyers in church law, and they have tribunals, and it's set up like a government, really. And when somebody like Mother Teresa, for instance, I believe she has already been canonized. She's Saint Mother Teresa. Usually it takes a long, long time, and many miracles have to be attributed to them. Someone asks for their help. It's official. When they're canonized, they've passed all the tests, and they're formally adjudged to be official saints. And then they go in the book, the directory, the lives of the saints. So as a teenager, I was very comfortable. Just my spiritual practice involved prayer and following the rules that I was given. But around 18, when I left home, I began to question. Even a little earlier, I had started looking into other things that were outside of the Catholic paradigm. And I was fascinated by the book written by Jean Dixon. Many of you might remember her. She was a famous psychic medium in the 60s. And I began investigating, and I might have been 20-ish, and my sister turned me on to Edgar Cayce. And I was fascinated by the idea that you could communicate directly with the spirit plane and receive information and guidance. I absolutely knew that it was true, but I didn't have any idea how I could do that. And my first foray into mediumship, I guess, I didn't think of it as that. As a teenager, probably around 18 or 19, I began to study palmistry. And it started with a little book. I don't know if anyone here is old enough. Probably I'm going to say you're younger than I am, but someone might be in my neighborhood. They had these little books for a quarter called Dell books. You remember them? And I got one on palmistry, and it was very intriguing to me. And I looked at all my family's hands, and I just enjoyed it. And then I started studying it more seriously, but not seriously enough that I memorized all. It's a science. It has rules, and it's predictable. And as a 19-year-old, I dropped out of school. I went to college for a year, and I decided I wanted to see the world. And I went to France and became an au pair girl. And I continued to study palmistry, and I became kind of like the parlor trick. You know, when family would come over of my French family, everyone wanted their palm read. And I'd look at their hand, and I remembered some basic stuff, but I found it was just a segue to just start winging it. But I discovered that even when I was just winging it, I was getting really good information. And they said, wow, that's amazing. And how can she do that? And I didn't know how I could do it, but I did. And the rules that I had learned were just kind of a jumping off point. That was in the 60s. And in 1970, I did have a near-death experience. I was going on vacation with my French family, and we were in the country on a country road, and it was late at night and raining cats and dogs, or as they say in French, hatchets. And the driver fell asleep at the wheel of the car, and she lost control. She went off, tried to correct, and the car went into a spin like a top. And I remember I was asleep when it started, and I woke up and I thought, well, not getting out of this alive. It's the end of my life. I just hope it's not really painful when my spirit separates from my body. And that's the last conscious thought I can remember. And the next thing I knew, I was standing in front of a huge oaken door, like the door of a castle. And I had a sense of excitement that I knew what was on the other side of the door. I spiritually could see the other side of the door was this magnificent green field, unearthly green, like emerald. And there was such a feeling of joy and excitement. I was really eager to go through the door. I put my hand on the wrought iron door pull, and two invisible hands came and thrust me backward. I wasn't allowed to enter because it wasn't my time. And the next thing I knew, I was flying physically, and I landed on my back in a field. I was thrown from the car. And I remember lying in the field feeling, what a jip. I wanted to go through that door. And like Pinocchio, I thought, okay, that arm's still attached. That one is. I realized I could move all my limbs. And I thought, I wonder if I still have my face. And I put my hand to my face, and it was covered in blood. I had a little nick over my nose. I broke my nose as I was ejected from the car. And I had your face bleeds a lot profusely. So this small cut on the bridge of my nose was bleeding like crazy. And there was a baby, a year and a half old, who was also thrown from the car, and he landed in soft mud. It was really an incredible experience of protection. The driver was bruised, and her 5-year-old child in the front seat was bruised, but none of us had lifelong injuries, which is pretty miraculous. And to this day, over 50 years later, I'm still very, very close to these people. You know, we having been through that together. In fact, I last saw them a couple of years ago. I do go to Paris on somewhat regular basis whenever possible, and I do always see them. And until very recently, they're well into their 80s, I always stayed with them. Why do I go to Paris? Well, I have a nonprofit foundation that mostly works in Haiti, and I've used my mediumship as a way to fundraise for my nonprofit. And I go to France to buy books for our library at thrift stores and flea markets. And, you know, I write ahead to get donations. And I've been able to create a library in Haiti with the donated books, you know, secondhand books, also new books from the proceeds of my touring. I'm getting a little off here. We'll come back to that about my world tour. In the 70s, I was living in Mexico, and I was introduced by a friend to a woman who could read your coffee cup. You've heard of reading tea leaves. Well, this lady made Turkish coffee with a very fine ground powdery coffee. And after you drank your coffee, she would look at your cup and she would read was like a fortune teller. And she said, you could do this. I said, I have no idea. And she said, just look at the cup and let it talk to you. Look at the pictures. Now, a lot of people would just see a little blob. But when I really looked at it, the coffee started to talk to me, and I would see pictures. And I would tell people, look, there's a tree. And if I traced it out to them, they could see, oh, yeah, that does look like a tree. And there's a horse. And I found that the coffee, again, just like the palmistry, it was just kind of a segue into opening to what the spirit world would give me. And I did that for a while, just for fun, for friends and family. It was, again, more like a parlor trick. In the 80s, I had an experience of channeling. It came to me very unexpectedly. And it was so out of my paradigm. At first, I was really hesitant about allowing myself to be a channel. I had moved to Korea for my husband's work, and 3 people came to visit me in my home. One was a very old Korean lady who spoke no English. One was a British woman of African descent. And the third one was a young Korean man who spoke fluent English. And they told me about messages that they'd been receiving from the spirit world. And I remember thinking, cuckoo, these people are really nuts. But I was polite and I served them. And then all of a sudden, I was chastised by the spirit world. And I was told, you should bow before this old lady. She's a princess in heaven. And I thought, oh. And then I began channeling. And I felt like almost they were expecting it, because they had been working, making this foundation. And I felt in the presence of this old lady who was a powerhouse spiritually. I felt very safe. I was very uncertain about channeling, because you have to open yourself to such an extent to become just a channel. My fear was, I don't want to just you don't leave the door of your house wide open and just let anybody come in. I was a little apprehensive about it, but something about the presence of this trio put me at ease. And shortly after, I was approached by someone in the spirit world who told me he wanted to use me. And it was very specific why and what he wanted me to do. And I was to pass information on to someone else who was in a position of leadership and was affecting a lot of other people. And I was a little nervous. And he said, well, if you're not willing to do it, I'll find someone else. And I thought, no, okay, I'll do it. So I went to the person I was supposed to tell about this, and he had never experienced anything like this. He knew the spirit world was real. He knew who the spirit was. And he said, he was thinking his questions. How can this be? And before he could verbalize the question, I was giving him the answer. The spirit would speak through me before he could actually ask the question. So then he realized this really is legit. And it started and it stopped. And then another medium from another continent took over. And I felt that my time as a channeler was complete. I channeled verbally, and I did it in select groups of people that were involved in this project. And it was a very powerful experience. The channelings were recorded on cassette tape, which is all lost now. But the other medium who started working very publicly, I wanted to keep it on the down low, because it could have caused problems for my husband. You know, not everybody is open, and he had a lot of responsibility, and I didn't want his reputation to be affected that his wife is a nutcase, because it really would have impeded his work. So it started and then it stopped. And I was told, thank you for doing what you did. You know, I had a dream that the spirit found a body transplant. Just like you get an organ transplant, well, he found a new body. So he thanked me and moved on. But that medium, when he was finished with that medium and had completed the work, the guy liked the limelight so much that even though that spirit had accomplished what he came to do, he just wasn't going to get off the stage. And he got really weird and started doing some very bizarre and strange things, and people were following him. And it scared the daylights out of me. So I thought, well, I'm never going to channel again. That is just too risky. And that was in the 80s, late 80s. In the 90s, a friend showed up on my doorstep, someone I'd known for 20 years, and said, I want to initiate you in Reiki. So I thought, okay, let's do it. And he initiated all my children and my whole faith community, anybody who wanted. He came and he taught us the principles of Reiki and gave us level 1. And then a lot of people were using it. And then he came back, and some of us wanted to go further. And through him, I actually became a 3rd degree Reiki master. I did not feel that this was my calling to do hands-on healing. I worked with another woman. We made a team of 2, and people would come to us, and I would just get this running narrative as we were doing Reiki, which according to Reiki rules, you're not supposed to do. But it would just be flowing through me. And again, I felt a certain grounding with the 2 of us working together. I was very conscious that I don't want to just kind of float away. I had small children at the time, and it was very important that I was really grounded and very present in the earth plane. My friend moved away to another state, and I thought, okay, my Reiki career is complete. But I felt I'm confident to do the readings and continue. So that was in the 90s. And I did that for several years, and I took a break. And around 2010, I was guided to the spiritualist church. I had read a book by a friend of mine who suffered the tragic loss of his son to suicide. And I knew him and I knew his wife. I knew his wife before I knew him, actually. And after I read his book, I went online. I thought, I wonder if there is a spiritualist church in Norfolk. And there was. And I went and enjoyed it very much, felt very much at home, that nobody's going to think I'm nuts because it's full of mediums here. And I started going to the mediumship development classes and learned some etiquette about mediumship, what you do and do not say if you get certain information. You just some very practical tips, and it was very valuable, and I enjoyed it very much, and I made a lot of friends, and some of them are right here now. Thank you. And I guess around the beginning of there were a lot of changes that took place in the spiritualist church, and a lot of us didn't feel at home there anymore. And then COVID came along, and they shut down for 2 years. And as it emerged after COVID, it wasn't what we had known, and we didn't feel at home there anymore, but we really missed each other. So we created a very loose band as a book club, the Wisdom Seekers, and we get together twice a month. And I forgot when Dick booked me for today that it's book club day. So they graciously agreed to come to my speech. So they're here with me, and I want to acknowledge them and thank them. And we've just, we're fellow travelers, and we really enjoy twice a month getting together, seeing our friends, sharing our vision of our path, enjoying good books on spiritual life together. And around 2017, well, exactly in 2017, not around, I had a visitation from a team of angels. Now, I had been working with angels for maybe 20 years, 25 years, very informally. I often would invoke angels to help, especially in a difficult situation. I would always ask for angel backup. And in 2017, my husband was invited. He would go to England about once a year to do some work there. And if I could get myself there, I was included. They wouldn't pay my airfare, but I could of course stay wherever he was going to stay, and they would feed me. So it was a real low budget trip. And our son had moved to Germany. In fact, Freeson and Ruth used to come here to the Fellowship of the Inner Light. And 6 years ago, they emigrated to Germany. Ruth is German, and she wanted their child to be bilingual, and she wasn't having any success getting him to speak German here. So the angels came to me, and they asked me to go to Scandinavia and to give workshops on how to work with angels, that they were eager to help us through this transitional time. What people didn't understand how real they are, how accessible they are, and what we need to do to connect with them. Basically, you have to ask. They respect our free will and they will not interfere unless we invite them. They're very polite. So my first reaction was, Scandinavia? I don't know a living soul in Scandinavia. And it's the only thing I know about Scandinavia. It's cold and it's really expensive. And I'm a low budget traveler. So I had my ticket to Germany, and then I had a ticket back from Iceland. Because I was on this super low budget airline that's now out of existence. Wow. And I thought, well, I've got this gap here of 10 days. I thought I might just stay and spend an extra 10 days with my son's family. Or I just kept getting this pressure. You need to do this. You need to do this. And I said, well, we'll see. If I can think of someone where I can, weasel an invitation. And I heard clearly, oh, ye of little faith. Just buy the tickets. So I thought, okay. And I was promised, if you just go out on faith, we'll take care of the business end of things, as in money. I said, I don't have any money to travel around Scandinavia. And the answer I got was, well, you have a credit card. And anyone who knows me, that's a 4-letter word for me, credit. I don't like to put anything on credit, because if I can't pay for it today, how am I going to pay for it next month? But I just took that leap of faith and I booked a flight from Germany to Copenhagen, to Stockholm, to Oslo, and then home from Reykjavik. And then as soon as I did that, and I got super bargain fares, like $40 and $50, then I thought, oh, I do have a Swedish friend. She's lived here forever, but she'll know someone. And then within about 3 or 4 days, I had invitations to all those places, enthusiastic invitations. The guy in Denmark said, this is an answer to a prayer. This is exactly what our community needs. And it just, everything fell in place. The guy in Iceland was a little less welcoming, and he wanted to know all my credentials. And I ended up never going to Iceland. I got an invitation to Korea. So I made it through Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. And then I joined my husband for a conference in Korea, which I hadn't initially been invited to, but it was a really good one. And I was really excited to go. And there, it was an international one. And I was able to network with people in the States who were there. And here I have, the Danish guy saying, oh yeah, she was really good, you should have her. And the old saying, a prophet is never appreciated in his hometown. Because I had started on an international level, some of the American group, this is my international faith community, because other people were telling them what a great experience it was, they said, yeah, sure, you can come. And my presentation in California, there were, I think, 25 people signed up. I said, anyone who pre-registers will get a free copy of this little book on angels. And 120 people came. And this was a consistent pattern. Same thing happened in Madrid, the same thing happened in Paris. They said, well, we might have 20 or 30 people that are interested. But the angels literally brought the people. And the way I paid for all this travel, the angel workshop is always free. That was the deal I have with the angels. Anyone can come, they never have to pay. But then afterwards, I would do one-on-one readings. And that's how people, the money that I raised for the readings would first of all pay all my travel expense. And then secondly, I could fund the work we do in Haiti. And it was pretty remarkable. So for 5 years, I was able to just have a constant cash flow, not a lot, but enough to do many wonderful projects, build a library, finish off a youth center, send school supplies every year, help to build an elementary school, distribute a special shoe that increases 5 sizes. Yeah, all kinds of things. And this is just because I did what I was told. Now, that's my build up to where we are now. Oh my, I've been talking a long time. Right now, what am I doing? I am doing readings, lots of them. They're all done remotely. And again, I got questions that I didn't know the answers to. What kind of readings do you do? I thought, I don't know, I just do a reading, whatever's around you. I do ask my sitters to prepare. Think about what you want to get from the reading. Set it up for me. If there's someone you want to talk to, ask them to come. Hold it in your sacred space before the reading. Come with a clear intention. But what I've discovered is my specialty, I really had to think about this because I just did it automatically. I help people in their relationships. And this can be relationships with living people or people on the spirit side. I help people to smooth things out, tie up loose ends, healing. I also help people to identify and to solve repeating ancestral patterns. Now, a lot of people blame everything on their past lives, but I have discovered that we are like links in a chain. And what has gone on in our ancestry, and science backs me up on this, we actually have the memories of our ancestors in our DNA. And a lot of times things are left to the next generation to resolve. And a common thing I've seen recently is many times people will come to me because they're having a particular struggle and they want to know the origin of it, so how they can solve it. And sometimes a troublesome spirit will step forward who was aggrieved in the past by one of their ancestors. And you think, well, you didn't cause it, you're not to blame, but you're 100% responsible. Probably many people are familiar with the Ho'oponopono, that if it comes to you, it's because you're the one that can fix it. And the Ho'oponopono prayer, for those who have never heard it, if I or my ancestors have caused any harm to you or your ancestors, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And I found that many times I can find these spirits who have caused illness, accident, troubled relationships, parent-child, spouses, whatever, disturbances at work, and they will tell their story, why they're so upset. And many times that's what they need. They need to be listened to with compassion. They need their pain to be acknowledged, and then they're willing to be escorted into a place of healing. I had a wonderful reading from Brian Berry, who is a member of the fellowship. And I remember this was probably in January. He was one of the afternoon speakers. And I asked him, do you notice an increase in angel activity? And he said, oh, yeah, way more than ever before. And this is what I have experienced. When I start my readings, I always begin with prayer and kind of go inward and ask, to be a clear and an accurate channel. I set up a field of protection, and I always start in the same place. I have this little reception room, and there's an angel sitting at a table. It's very Spartan, and he's just a very generic angel, nothing outstanding or remarkable. And he has an old-fashioned appointment book like doctors used to have. And he has a pencil and he checks us in. And then there's an escort angel that takes us up the stairs. This room is like a root cellar. It's pretty primitive in that sense. But I figure, oh, this must be the earth plane because it's underground. And it's pleasant, it's light, it's cool, it's a pleasant place. We go up the stairs. And recently, the angels were always escorted by an angel, but they used to lead us up. And I've noticed now they're just telling us to go up, and they take up the rear like a protection. You know, we're always in their care. They're holding the sacred space for us. And recently, some of the escorting angels have started showing up with all kinds of designs on their robe. Usually I'd see an angel in a basic white robe. They don't like to be distinguished unless they have something really special. And often they'll have a gold sash. But I've started to see them in other colors or with elaborate script sometimes on their robes. And it's because we're in a very critical transitional time. And they will give signals and messages. And they usually will lead us to a place where our message is waiting. I have a generic stage, I'll call it. It's an open space. It's a big grassy field. And there are woods on either side. And if you go to the end of the field, it's a cliff that drops down to the ocean. And every time I do a reading, the sets are different. There might be a carnival there. There might be a war going on. It might be pouring rain and thunder with thunder and lightning. Sometimes, you know, we'll see a storm approaching and they'll rush us. They'll say, quickly, we have to go into this shelter. And that's where whoever we're there to meet will be. My readings usually have a lot of symbols in them. And sometimes they're very obvious and sometimes not so much. You have to think about them. My readings are at least an hour. You try to stick to an hour, no more, but sometimes they go a little longer. Because I found I used to do 30 minutes or an hour. The effort it takes me to really go into someone's field, it's the same. And for half an hour, I feel like I'm rushed. I can't get enough out. I don't charge the same in every country. You know, the developed world has one price. And when I go to Eastern Europe, it's a very different economy. It's not about having a specific price. There should be an equal exchange of energy. And what is a legitimate offering in Prague, for instance, it's not the same as in Paris. People have different earning possibilities. So it's very important that people pay to have a reading. Now, usually they will just pay with money. But if that's impossible, if somebody's in severe financial straits, they can pay differently. I remember I had one woman who really wanted a reading, and I could sense she really couldn't pay. So I asked her to pray for me for a certain number of days, and I gave her my intentions. She was so excited because she wasn't begging for anything, but she gave what she could. And that, believe me, prayer is a very valuable exchange. If somebody will sincerely pray for me, I really appreciate that. Most people, that's too much trouble. They'd rather write a check. But there must be a fair exchange of energy, or I risk taking on somebody else's karmic debt. If I give them something for nothing that they haven't put themselves out. And remember, money is just a measurement. It's an exchange of energy. It's their numbers that we assign to the value of something. So that's the simplest for most people, is just to have an exchange of time and money. But if that's not possible, there are many other ways to do it. But there must be an exchange so that the sitter can open themselves like to receive their blessing. And I found that the readings really do impact people. Because as I said, I do ask them to prepare. I used to require a 3-day waiting period. I said, you have to pray for 3 days. You have to make your intention, write it down, and hold that in your sacred space. However you express that, come very clear. Things have changed. The weather has changed spiritually now. Things are happening so fast. Our speaker this morning talked about be careful of your thoughts because they will manifest and really fast. So just putting it out there, you are going to get results. So make sure you're putting out the things you really want. Don't waste time thinking about what you don't want, or it might show up. Mediumship does run in my family. My sister is as sensitive as I am, but she doesn't have confidence in herself, and her daughter is too. And recently we accompanied her husband of 55 years on his journey to the spirit realm. He was very ill for 6 months. His life expectancy was 2 months after his diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, but he wasn't ready to go. He really didn't disbelieve, but he didn't believe there was a spirit realm. He was so excited when he finally let go. And he was standing next to her looking at his remains and said, "Is that what I was hanging on to?" And he was talking to us, all three of us, my sister, their daughter, and me, nonstop, as we were planning his memorial service. And he said, "Oh, my peeps over here are so envious of me. Not only do you know I'm alive and you can hear me, you're even laughing at my jokes." And he said, everybody else is trying to comfort their grieving family. Everybody's weeping and wailing, and they're saying, I'm alive, and nobody believes it, nobody hears it. And when we went to the funeral home to make arrangements, he was right there in the mix, and they offered my sister a service, and he said, save your money. They asked if she wanted to be present at his cremation for an extra $100. And he said, I'm not going to be there. Why would you want to be there? And it just went on. And sometimes we'd be sitting and one of us would suddenly burst out laughing and everyone would turn and say, what did he say? And for the memorial, we had a big, beautiful portrait of him. And so I'd look at that portrait, that was sitting in the living room waiting to go to the memorial service. And he'd just start in. He said, man, this is like a scary movie. You look at the picture and it starts talking. But he said, I'm not scary. And he helped us along that week. We had so much to do because we planned the memorial service ourselves. We didn't use the funeral home. They just took care of his earthly remains. And it was a celebration. It was so much fun. There was so much joy and laughter. He said, I think I already shared, he said, I never knew dying could be so much fun. And there were a lot of things. My sister, as I said, is very spiritual. She was the religious one. And he just thought, well, I don't know. But with his support and cooperation, they contributed very generously towards causes that are creating world peace. And it didn't make any sense to him, but he really loved my sister. And he trusted her. He felt she knew something he didn't. And when he got to the spirit world, he said, oh man, this is so cool. It's like being an officer's wife. You get invited to all the same parties. His father was a general, so that was a very real analogy for him. And he didn't realize the good that he had done in his life just by going along with my sister. But, they did it as a couple. So he's having a good time, and he's still telling my sister jokes, especially when she looks at some of his things and she gets a little teary. And this is very consistent because in his life, when there was a heavy moment, he always had a joke to break the tension. Well, I don't have a whole lot of time for questions and answers, but if anybody has a question, I hope I told you. I did say, watch your thoughts. Thoughts become things. Think good thoughts and blessings. And we are in an amazing age. Do you see a transformation from the darkness that's prevalent so badly in America? Do I see a transformation from the darkness that's so prevalent? Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. We are in labor, giving birth to a new world. And all the darkness is being exposed. It's all coming up to the light. We're in the time of high noon. We're in a major transition. So please be encouraged. Did you have a question? I don't remember. Once I say it, it's gone. It just kind of comes through. We are in a time of transition. We are birthing a new order. One thing I did take a note from our speaker, Miss Regal. There is a layer of sludge that has been removed between heaven and earth. It's very easy to connect with the higher realms. It's really easy. I had somebody recently in a reading, she wanted to know if Jesus had anything to say to her. And my first reaction was, I'm not on that level. But Jesus said, oh, I can go to anybody. I can come way down. Don't worry, I got this. And he did have a message for her. And he was very, very grateful of what she had done to support his work and his folks. And high spirits, really, really highly evolved spirits, they can go way down, way up. My range is a little more limited. Sometimes I'm asked to go into a realm that's a little bit uncomfortably high for me. And I'm always given special help. Kind of like if you want to go into the ocean, you might need a scuba tank because it's so, the vibration is so high. I'm not that developed, but the sitter might really need that message. So I will be assisted. Another question, Bill, did you have your hand up? Anybody in Zoom land have a question?
If anybody wants to be unmuted, you can unmute yourself now to ask the question. We have Mary and we have Yat.
All right, Mary and Yat. Tell us your question. Tell Dick and he'll tell me. And I'll well, everybody in the room can hear Dick.
Ask Yat Mary to unmute. I asked Yat to unmute, but they have not done that. So I have a question.
Okay.
In the meantime, how did your near-death experience affect your psychic abilities?
That's a good question. How did my near-death experience affect my psychic abilities? I cannot say precisely that it did, because before the near-death experience, I was very aware of spiritual reality. It removed any fear of death. Well, let me take that back. When I was raising young children, I really didn't want to die because I thought how difficult their lives would be without a mother. So I just hoped, that I could complete that period of my life to get my children to independence. And, I'm ready to go anytime. I remember there's a little song my kids had on, like, heaven is a wonderful place filled with glory and grace. Yeah, I'm ready to go. I have no fear of death. Oh, I don't feel my work is complete, but I do feel when I've completed what I came to do, I'm going to go, and not before. Unless I do something really stupid and, take a wrong track and God says, I can't use you. Come on, you're too far off there.
What I have observed from other persons is they were not open at all to receiving consciously from the spirit realm until they had a near-death experience. And then it opened up for them. You were open prior to your near-death experience. And I'm wondering if your near-death experience opened you any more.
I cannot say definitively that it did. Before the near-death experience, I was hungry for more connection with the spirit realm. And I think what that gave me at the age of, I was actually 20, the understanding that it's very real and it's a continuum. I was disappointed to come back for a split second. And then I realized I have a whole life ahead of me. I've had some brushes with death. When I was 12, I almost drowned in the ocean, and I knew that it was not my time. And I remember fighting desperately just to take the next breath, come up. I got caught in a riptide. And I've been in another car accident that I was not in a seatbelt and I got thrown all over the car. I looked like, domestic violence victim. But the spiritual voice said, just relax, everything's going to be fine. And I've faced the wrong end of a gun more than once. And I just knew I can't go until I get my invitation. As my brother-in-law was dying, we were reassuring him, it's okay. He kept talking about, I want to go home. I want to go home. He was in and out of this world and the next and very uncertain what was happening. And he told my sister, I don't want to go without you. And she said, I can't go. It's by invitation only. My invitation hasn't come yet, but I'll catch up with you. So I feel my gifts that I'm 72 years old, so I've had a few years to work on them. They're for the service of this planet in my realm, which happens to be very international because of my faith community. I can pretty much go anywhere in the world. I've been to almost 50 countries. I've been to every continent except Antarctica. That's on the bucket list. I don't know who lives there, but there are a few people that live there permanently. Oh, aliens. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. But there are humans there too. Not too many. Underground. Well, I feel that my mission is to work with humans and angels. The angels are helping me to let people know, first of all, how much they are loved and how each one of us is a unique expression of our Creator, that we are divine beings having a physical experience, but we are eternal spirits. And to share that with people, that every life has purpose, and that even lives that are filled with struggle and difficulty, they're all opportunities to move forward. My sister took in a foster child at 12 who had an incredibly suffering background and has an incredibly suffering life. But what he has done with what he has is remarkable. It's remarkable. Even though his life is still very complicated, he has accomplished so much. So much. So everyone has a different contract. You can't compare people. And okay.
Sometimes persons who have a near-death experience will have a very brief experience, but they return with what they call downloads. And over time, in the years following that, they'll be receiving more information as if a computer download was opening up. Did you experience anything like that, perhaps with your work with angels?
Well, yes, I did. Shortly after, the near-death experience was in 1970. And in 1972, I was in a military cemetery in Holland. And Holland is as flat as a tabletop. And these were World War II graves. I went with my uncle, and a childhood friend and neighbor of his was buried there, and he would take pictures for the boy's parents. He was tragically an only child. And suddenly I saw this sea of graves, and they're laid out in precision. It looks like soldiers standing at attention. And suddenly for each grave, I saw a young man standing there. And they said, we gave everything. Now it's your turn. And I remember at the age of 22 thinking, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? What does that mean? I knew that I had to live a life of service, but I didn't really know what that looked like. And less than a year later, I got the answer. And I've been following that path for 50 years.
Mary has a question.
Yes, Mary.
How can you tell you are connected? I think that means how can you tell when you are connected? But she could clarify it. unmute Mary. Ask her to unmute. Perhaps she could explain. Can you unmute Mary? Get to security. People can unmute themselves right now. Well, anyway.
I can answer that question. It's kind of like if you make a phone call, how do you know when someone answers the phone? It's very clear. There have been times when I wanted to do a reading and I was not permitted. And in both cases, it was because I was physically exhausted. One time I was in France, and when I'm traveling and I'm touring, I usually have a brief time in each city, maybe 3 days. One day is the workshop, maybe 2 days I do readings, and they're one after another after another. And I find when I'm in that mode, it's like I'm being carried by the angels. I have like an external battery pack. And then when I get on the train to go to the next city, it's wham, I'm just shut down. And a young couple came to, I always have a homestay when I travel. Is one way I do it on a shoestring budget. And the son and daughter-in-law of my host came to see me at 9 o'clock at night. I'd probably done about 6 or 8 readings that day, which is like 2 weeks worth of work. And I thought they were coming to discuss something else about energy. And when I realized they expected a reading, I really wanted to do it. And I saw an angel standing in front of me with his hands on his hips saying, "Oh, no, you don't." I usually pray to open up. I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. It's like one word came out and I was mute. Another time recently, I've recently had some health issues and I wanted to do a reading for someone. And I started my initiating prayer and I had an angel with a hard hat and a reflective vest over his white robe. And there was a big barricade that said "Road Closed." They give me all kinds of visuals. Sometimes I don't have the energy to do it, and I'm not smart enough to acknowledge that. But normally, and I've come, sometimes I'll overwork and then I have to stop. Now, because I just had surgery, I'm limiting myself to 1 reading a day, and that's a pace I can maintain. And if I try to do too much, many times I'll be blocked. I'm not permitted. Because I can't do it. I have to have a lot of help. I'm just like a pipe that water's flowing through. And something that is hard for people to grasp, I don't remember anything. I don't get attached to something that's profound and moving for you. It's for you. But I am kind of like disassociated from it. Otherwise, I would be so overwhelmed with everybody's stuff. The exception is, there is an exception. There are people that I read for who have world level missions working towards world peace. I never reveal the identities of my sitters. Some of them, it would be very detrimental to their position. But sometimes I see things that just blow me away, like what's coming and what's going on that we don't see. And in those cases, I will ask permission. May I share this anonymously, of course? And those things that hit me personally, emotionally, those things I will remember. But people's private business, 24 hours later, I can't remember it. I don't even remember who my clients are. I might have read for you, and I know you're my friend, but I don't know I ever read for you. It's like it goes through this cosmic shredder after the reading's over. Like a dream, it's easy to forget dreams. It's very much like that because I'm in another state of consciousness.
You answered your question. I think you answered the question is how do you know when you have permission to go ahead and give a reading?
Oh, well, first of all,
how can you tell you are connected? And I think she means herself. How does she know when she is receiving from an angel or a spiritual guide?
that is a very good question. The first thing I would advise anyone who's trying to reach higher realms, check your motivation. The higher spirit realms work with love, compassion, check your ego at the door, the desire to serve, to be used, that attracts high levels. If you're trying to show off, you're gonna get help, but it's not what you want necessarily. You feel it intuitively. That's what I experience. It's an energy that's very recognizable.
Mary says, she writes, I cannot, we asked her to unmute, she wrote back, I cannot talk, only chat.
Okay.
Perhaps you'll send a message, Mary. Does that answer your question? Or could you clarify the question if that doesn't answer?
Okay. And any other questions while we're waiting for Mary? Come on, you guys. I told you have to ask questions. No, that's a good question, Kathleen. Thank you. I don't normally see spirit as I'm walking through my daily life. I have an on and an off button. I don't want to see what's going on in everybody's world. It's kind of like, it's none of my business. It's like you wouldn't walk into someone's house without knocking on the door. And most people, you wouldn't go to their house unless they invite you, unless it's a very close friend. So my work is done by invitation only. I will go into your field, first of all, if you invite me, and I feel I can help you, and there's an equal exchange of energy. There are times when I'm told to offer a reading to someone, and I'm not afraid of taking on their karma because these are people that are doing really big things, and they have so much credit. They have a lot of, what do you call it? There's a banking term. Anyway, yeah, they have a lot of merit in escrow, so I'm not afraid to do free readings for certain people. But when I know that the person is willing to I charge $125 an hour. For most people, that's significant. They're not going to do it, like just for fun. It's because they're serious. Okay. Do I see your angels? No, unless I have reason to. It's like I have to go into another vibration. Sometimes they just show up and I'm aware of them. When my brother-in-law was dying and we were sitting with him 24 hours a day, he was seeing them. I wouldn't necessarily see them, the ones he saw, but their presence was very palpable. If you're around a woman giving birth or somebody making their exit, the angels are just all over. They're very, very present.
Mary responds, I see images as I close my eyes and do keep dream journal. Thanks for your input.
Oh, dream journaling is wonderful because we all have the ability to connect to the spirit world, and we do it often in our dreams, but most of us, myself included, we forget them. But dream journaling will help you hold on to them.
Claire, I feel really close to you in spirit.
Thank you, Dick.
It's just like we've been friends for a long time.
We probably have.
I've just gotten to know you, and I cherish the gift that you have, and welcome the opportunities to receive from you, the things that you know, the things that you've seen, and to get readings from you, to learn, to get readings from you, because I believe you are a clear, open channel. I appreciate your wisdom. I cherish the descriptions, the limits that you put on your readings and on yourself, the respect that you give to other people. I just really am thankful that I have met you, that you're present with us today, and I'm hoping that we'll continue in relationship.
Thank you very much, Dick. I hope so too. Thank you everyone for coming. And if you want a reading, you can just find me with Dick, or I have an email. It's very easy. I come from Norfolk, Virginia. My name is Claire, and you can find me at norfolkclaire@yahoo.com. And if you forget that, just talk to Dick. You all know how to find him. Norfolk Claire. at Yahoo. Oh, okay. Well, I'm easy to find. And I'm learning very slowly to work online, and I will be offering classes on mediumship development, message circles, and I'm even going to try doing billet readings. A medium circle. Oh, okay. That's something we could think of for the future. Everybody gets a short message. Everyone in the group. That's a possibility. And so thank you. I think I've gone over my time.
Perfectly all right.
Okay.
We're interested in everything you had to say.
Did Yacht have a question that wasn't answered? Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, you all asked really good questions. Oh, Kathleen, there was somebody, I used to see angels around her all the time. Did you know Anne Marie Croteau? I called her the angel lady. Whenever I served on the platform at the Spiritualist Church, I would go to her, and she had gangs of them with her all the time. They're available to anybody who wants to work with them. Just ask. That's it. ASK, ask. All right. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yes.